That was quite something, folks. All right, Nuggets fans, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn, at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here to discuss what the heck happened last night to the Denver Nuggets. They lose in a horrible way. I think the final score was 145 to 118. 145 in regulation. That was an actual number of points that the Nuggets gave up last night. If you listened to the show yesterday, then you would know, hey, I told you I didn't know how they were going to actually slow down the New York Knicks. And it turns out the answer was they wouldn't. They were not going to slow down the New York Knicks. Tough scene, unfortunately. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the press conferences that happened after, just any long-term concerns that we have. I think there's some Murray and Russell Westbrook positivity that we can get into if we want to take that general tone, but I got to imagine that a lot of folks are just wanting to sort of berate the team a little bit, and I understand why. Like, after the Los Angeles win, you lay that kind of an egg, it gives back all of the goodwill that you just earned. And that is an unfortunate place for the Nuggets to be. We'll get into it all. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. My buddy Jeff Morton is in the house. Jeff, nice to see you. The Nuggets forgot to tell people that they were taking the night off. I wish they had told me. I would have taken the night off too. But your boy is always working. Your boy is always doing what he needs to do to keep it going. True Teller says, Ryan, did you see the ESPN video about the Jamal Murray statement? I did not. Shannon Sharp was on point. I did not see it. Look, I was in the room when Jamal was giving that presser. I asked multiple questions to Jamal when he was giving that presser, and I didn't take it the same way that it seems like it was taken over video. And honestly, none of the folks in the press conference room took it the same way as it's being taken. I think over video form. So, look, we'll get into that in just a little bit. We do want to talk about the actual game, what the heck happened before then, and if you guys have any questions or any things that you think that should be addressed, whether it's from Murray, whether it's from Malone, whether it's from Nikola Jokic in his presser, drop them down in the comments, and I'll try to get to them in the second segment. But for now, like, I went back just now and I watched the first half of the game against the New York Knicks. Oh boy, that was an embarrassing showing from a defensive standpoint. And it didn't get better in the third quarter. That's the thing that I think should be really disappointing to a lot of people. It was 4 quarters of really bad defense. Fourth quarter, it was more the Knicks, like they only scored 32. But 36 points in the first, 40 points in the second, 37 points in the third quarter. It didn't matter like what coverage the Nuggets were going to throw at them, what matchups the Nuggets were going to throw at them, what schemes they were going to use. The effort just wasn't there. And when the effort's not there, it's really hard to execute on scheme against a really good offense. And that's who the Knicks are. After tonight, they might be the number 1 offense in the entire NBA. And last night, excuse me. But that's a lot of points to give up. 76 points in 1 quarter, and then I think that's 120. No, it's 113 in 3 quarters. That is a lot of points. A lot of points to be giving up, and the Nuggets should feel embarrassed. They should absolutely feel like this was a pretty disgusting one overall. But yeah, I think Michael Malone lit into them in the comments or in the post game as well. Like, before he came to us in the presser, just the effort wasn't there, and he made sure to let the Nuggets players know about it. And he needs the leaders, specifically Jokic and Murray, on the floor to be better and to be providing a little bit more energy and execution. Jokic's defense, I went back and watched. It wasn't like he was just kind of present. He wasn't really doing much of anything. Murray wasn't the problem on the defensive end. I thought that Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, Michael Porter, that was their worst game defensively as a trio. And it wasn't close. Like, they did not execute on the schemes. They did not execute and get through screens. It was really bad. But look, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. And that's what, when you're facing a really talented team, sometimes this is the wake-up call that you kind of need. So there's not a lot to talk about from the fact that, like, hey, Denver just sucked on defense. It really doesn't, like, there isn't much really to break down beyond that other than Denver sucked on defense. And Jamal Murray said it to me in the postgame. He had a decent offensive game. Like, it was fine. 20 points, 7 assists, 31 minutes, like 0 turnovers. He looked reasonably good in getting to the places where he needed to go and operating on the offensive end. Part of that is because the Knicks aren't a great defense themselves, but part of that is because I think he might be making teeny tiny progress. But it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the team's going to be down by 30 points, 35 points, however many they were down by at the max. It was a disgusting offensive performance or defensive performance. Denver, I'm looking in they gave up 144 offensive rating to the Knicks. That's about as bad as it ever gets. That might be the worst defensive performance that a Michael Malone team has ever had. And it's just sad. It just is sad that Michael Malone, who was honored pregame, along with the starting five, then Kyle Speller goes, and please welcome your all-time leading coach in wins for the Denver Nuggets franchise, Michael Malone, or whatever he said. 733 wins. He had just came off of that game. The Nuggets had just came off of that game. Michael Malone gets announced that way to the crowd. He's got a little small smile on his face. And then they gave up that performance. Like, it's just kind of embarrassing for everybody involved. And that's a very frustrating thing. So I hope that this is an aberration. I hope that this is something where the Nuggets, like I said, they just needed a wake-up call. But to say it's that much more, that much less than that, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. I think it's important for people to not use this as a game that defines who the Nuggets are. Yeah, I don't think that it's going to be that much of a thing, but I don't know. The actual, yeah. Seal says here, Jamal should be called out for flying in a private jet to watch UFC the night before the Memphis game. Honestly, for being consistent, then sure. Yeah, I have said it on multiple platforms that I didn't think it was a good idea. I thought it was actually pretty dumb. And yeah, because then it's one thing if you do that and then you play hard and you play well, but that was before the first Memphis game, and he played like butt. So like, there's definitely some issue. Okay, now we're gonna get to Jamal's comments in the post game. Jamal's tweet might cause locker room drama. There's actually something that I saw earlier that was a little bit more on this track. Seal says here, Jamal called out teammates living in LA, P-Watt, and Westbrook. Jamal's so full of himself. That is not what he did. The Nuggets as a team stayed in Los Angeles on Saturday night. And that was a choice that the team made. It was a late game. There was already, like, if they had gone back to Denver, they would be getting in at about 4 o'clock in the morning and going to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning anyway in Denver. So they decided, you know what, we're going to sleep in Los Angeles. We're going to rest up here. We've already got people that have family out here. Let's just take a chill pill. And I don't think that Jamal phrased it correctly. But I don't think he was calling out Peyton Watson and Russell Westbrook. Like, that's not what he was doing. Russell Westbrook was one of the guys that actually showed up. Like, I thought that Peyton Watson had a horrible game, and that's a separate thing. But Russell Westbrook really showed up and put himself into a position like he wasn't about to go away in the fourth quarter. He scored 24 points in the first 9 minutes of the fourth quarter. That was an incredible scoring performance from Russ. Um, but I don't think that that's what Jamal was doing, and he tried to correct that in the post game tweet. I don't know exactly the phrasing that he used, but when I read it and when I was there, when I was there, that was not the way that I took it. That's not the way that any of us took it. Um, Actually, that's not true. There was some conversation about did he call out the folks that live in LA, and apparently the answer is no. He tried to correct that, but no, it wasn't like some guys slept out in LA and then the rest of the team was on a flight back to Denver. That's not what happened. The the entire group was staying out in LA for an extra night. So, look, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're not as prepared. I think that actually contributed to Denver losing in this game? No, I honestly don't. Um, but I do think that Denver's kind of up and down in terms of what they believe they can get away with and what they because it's all about what you think you can get away with in the NBA. Can you get away with low effort? Can you get away with kind of half-assing the execution from a night-to-night basis? The answer a lot of times is you can't get away with a lot because the NBA is really good. You have to be on your game. For the Nuggets, for a long time, they've been able to get away with, we don't have to give like 100% effort in the first quarter because we'll be fine. And I don't think that that's exactly what's going on here, but I do think that Denver's getting off to really slow starts right now, and I think that they're planning on Jokic to save them entirely. And the one moment that, and like this between this and the Mavs game, these are moments where Jokic wasn't perfect. He wasn't pristine for the entire time, and so Denver suddenly finds themselves down 10 because nobody else can step up in that gap. Mr. Exquisite Nugget has a super chat here. He says, "What's worse, this loss or the Mavs loss, Ryan?" The Mavs loss happens. Like, I don't think that was at least Denver showed some fight in that one. I this one is definitely worse because of it certainly drew some worse reactions, but it also can be better for Denver to have this happen because, as Nikola Jokic said post game, it's nice to be punched in the face every once in a while, which is great. That's objectively funny, because it means that they can feel something. They know that they're still feeling something. So I'm curious to see how everybody handles this, and we'll get into some short-term concerns, some long-term concerns, kind of what's going on with this Nuggets team, and then we'll this will be a shorter podcast because I just don't really have that much left to say about this particular game and the overall ramifications of this, because to me this just happens in the NBA. It Sometimes you go through a low effort stretch, especially you get around the holidays. People want to go home. They want to go chill out with their families. Sometimes you just get like this. And I'm just not surprised that this is happening. Like, it could happen to the Celtics. It's not happening to the Celtics right now. It's not happening to most other teams right now. But this is the time where it's happening to the Nuggets. And it's on the Nuggets to figure out and get out of this kind of slump really quickly. Because there are some reasons why they should be able to do a little bit better than they are. All right. When we come back, we are going to chat about everything else involving this Nuggets team. Did I do my Bet Online read? I don't think I did. Before we head to a break, this podcast is brought to you by the good folks over at Bet Online, world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with a large selection of football, NBA, and NHL props. Head on over to Bet Online today to get in on America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. We will be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right. We are back at it. Pickaxe and Roll. Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button down below. Would really, really appreciate it. Michael Malone, not happy in the post-game press conference. There were a lot of awesome quotes, not going to lie. Like there were a lot of really good ones. I'm just going to read some off from the story that I had last night. If you're interested, milehighsports.com. Denver Nuggets blown out at home, lose big to the New York Knicks. Tonight we got embarrassed, Michael Malone declared in an emotional post-game press conference. What just happened? 16 games in, we're talking about effort, we're talking about toughness, we're talking about physicality. We didn't make them do anything hard, Jokic said. Everything seemed to be really easy for them. We didn't show up tonight. Malone says, Malone says, in a response to the question about flushing the loss, and this is where the title for this show comes up above me on the screen. In a response to, do you flush this game away? Do you just is this something where you don't actually like take away too much from it? You just move on. He says, fuck that. We're not flushing. No, we're not flushing. You don't flush when you get embarrassed. You don't flush when you gave up 145 points. You don't flush when you didn't play hard, didn't play with effort, didn't play with physicality. I'm not flushing anything. By the way, he's pounding the table as he does that. He was in his bag, and it was pretty impressive. I asked him after that, well, who do you look? Do you look to your leaders in that situation? Your guys on the court that you're trying to lead you to a championship. And I'm, of course, talking about Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Michael Malone immediately goes to Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook, he's vocal, and we need more than Russell Westbrook. I need Nikola Jokic. I need Jamal Murray. I need guys that have been here in that starting lineup to be vocal. Leadership would be great. Toughness would be great. Physicality would be great. Playing like you actually care would be great. And we didn't do that tonight. So I tend to think, look, going back and watching some of the stuff, Murray was fine last night. Jokic was fine last night. It definitely felt like kind of going through the motions for a lot of folks. As I brought up in the first segment, it really felt like the start of the problems here were from Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Michael Porter Jr. Denver's leaders on the floor have to be able to get into those guys, have to be able to lay into them a little bit and make sure that they are playing a whole bunch harder and more accurately and with more precision than they did last night. The problem that you run into is that Jokic he's a leader, but he's more of a leader by example. He's not going to yell at guys out on the court. He's not going to do that emotional thing where he calls people out publicly or privately. He treats it a little bit differently than that. And then Murray, who is somebody who would do that, who has like done that, been the emotional heartbeat for Denver for a long time, has been so bad for so long here at the beginning of the season that he's lost a little bit of that credit where he could be like, look at what I'm doing. You have to do it too, because Murray's not really doing that stuff. There have been some things that he's been able to do. The passing is good. Some of the defense is good, but there are also times like against Dallas where the defense was horrible from Murray. So it's kind of like throwing stones in a glass house at that point. Like you can't really do it. You can't really talk about effort and execution and playing the right way when he hadn't been doing it that much. So where does Denver get it from them? Who delivers that message? Who's the one who is willing to do those difficult things? Russell Westbrook is one. He's been willing to do it. And honestly, like I give Russ a lot of credit. He is going to unapologetically be him. He's going to call out what he sees. He's going to play, not just play the right way, but always approach things in the correct way. with the intention of going 100%, going hard. And I'm just at the point where I think, kind of like Jeff Green in years past, like Russell Westbrook has the cadre to be the leader, or to be a leader on the team, somebody who could get them out of the emotional funk. So I'm curious to see how this dynamic sort of evolves here, because Murray's got to continue playing well in order to generate some of that goodwill again. And then you get moments like last night, and whether he has to correct it or not post game, like on social media or whatnot, like, I don't think a lot of people want to hear it from Murray at this point. I think everybody will want to hear from Jokic, but adding to Jokic's burden after he already does as much as he does, that's a tough place for the MVP to be. Like, he shouldn't have to worry about everybody giving their 100% and executing defensive schemes, because he's already doing everything else on the offensive end for the team. So why put that burden on him as well? It's a tough thing. And so I don't know how they are going to handle it. I don't know what they're going to do. The good news is that, as Matt and I mentioned last night on Locked On, there's another game. There's another game that they play on Wednesday night. I don't even remember who they play. I should probably know that. Let's hover over this. Oh, they go to Utah. Oh, God. Oh, crap. Denver never wins their first game in Utah. Like, no matter what. Like, I don't know what to tell people. But maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the time. I think there have been a couple of times where they've won the second game that they play in Utah, but never the first game. For whatever reason, it just doesn't work. Despite the fact that the Jazz have been pretty bad over the course of these last few years, it's just going to be tough. So I'm curious to see how they respond. Like, who's going to be delivering that message? Who's going to be really putting their foot down? Denver already defeated Utah at home in blowout fashion, but as was mentioned in the comments, the Knicks just lost to Utah. Like, the Knicks, who humiliated the Nuggets tonight, just lost to Utah. So I don't know what's actually going to come of this. I think that there's going to be some fun, interesting things to happen. So, look, hopefully Denver can get on track with it, but I don't know. I don't know what's actually going to happen. Don't Tell Santa Cruz asks, can you talk about the AG injury? I heard now they don't have a timeline, but so could it be even longer? I was under the impression that he was a little bit closer than it seems like he was. He and Michael Malone talked, I think, yesterday or the day before, about how he was feeling, what was going on, and just some of the things that were bothering him. Because Gordon was playing really, really well before that injury, and I think he's very frustrated that was kind of taken away from him by just a random calf strain. So AG injury, like the no timetable thing, is pretty tough. It is definitely pretty tough to figure out overall. I don't have a good answer for you as to when he should come back. Usually when you get a calf strain like this, kind of in that second degree kind of calf strain, it's about 3 weeks. That's just the general remembrance that I have. When it's a hamstring strain, it can be even longer. Like, I remember PJ Dozier back in the day. He had a hamstring strain, and he was out like 6 weeks. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes the soft tissue injuries they're the ones that get you, because you do not want to re-injure that. And a calf strain it's one step off of an Achilles. So, like, they're all connected. I think that everybody's got to be patient with it. This will be a good opportunity, and it has been a good opportunity for Peyton Watson to really step up in this moment. Last night was a bad Peyton Watson game. Just straight up, he was not good enough. The line that Peyton Watson put out there in 22 minutes was really bad. 2 of 4 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3, 2 of 2 from the line, 6 points. But he had 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 1 turnover, 2 fouls. That's just not good enough from an effort and an engagement standpoint. And sometimes there's just not enough that you can really do. But I do think that overall this time has been beneficial to him. But there are some things where, like, yeah, would Aaron Gordon have been a little bit better in that moment? Probably, because he's had a lot of practice. He's able to rotate onto guys like Karl Anthony Towns a little bit more frequently. But the thing about Peyton Watson is he's able to guard guys like Jalen Brunson a little bit more effectively than somebody like Aaron Gordon. So both of them will be useful. But yeah, I would not think about Aaron Gordon playing until you get a positive word. Like, don't anticipate it. Let it happen naturally. Here's the schedule that Denver has coming up for them. They play on Wednesday at Utah. And once they're done with that, they get 3 days off. And then December 1st, they play at the LA Clippers. December 3rd, they come home and they play the Golden State Warriors. December 5th, they're at Cleveland. December 7th, at Washington. December 8th, at Atlanta. So when we heard about the injury to Aaron Gordon, that December 8th game was about the time that I was thinking, okay, that's probably when that's when you start to think about getting him back. Like, Denver had to know that they were going to possibly miss Aaron Gordon for like 15 games. And to be clear, they've done okay, like, in that stretch. He went out during the Toronto game. They won that game along with the next 3, and then since that they've been 2-4. So overall, they are 6-4 since Aaron Gordon went down. If I told you that at the beginning that they'd be 6-4, you'd be like, not great, but not terrible. So they're kind of on that precipice right now. They've got some road games coming up, and they've got some games against some pretty tough teams. Can they survive is a fair question. They've got, I think, 6 more on that general track that I was talking about. At Utah, at Clippers, home versus Warriors, at Cleveland, at Washington, at Atlanta. Some of those games are tough. Some of those games shouldn't be so tough. We will see which version of the Nuggets actually shows up. Martin with a long comment. He asks, what's the chances we see A, Russ in the closing group over Jamal, or B, Russ starting? Probably unlikely, but hard to argue based on recent trends. We talked about this in the media room yesterday. I don't think that, like, starting Russ over Murray is a non-starter. It's never going to happen. If you think it happens, it's not something that's going to happen. Murray's getting paid $50 million a year. He's been starting in Denver for the last 7 to 8 years. He has been a consistent option with Michael Malone for a long, long time. He will not be benched before he is traded, if that's like the order of operations that we get to. Like, that's just not going to happen unless it's a playoff thing where he's so bad that he actually needs to get benched. Russ, despite look, here's the thing. This happens all the time when you get a good bench player. Everybody's clamoring for them to start the moment that the starter is actually bad. The great thing about having a great bench player is they could change the energy. They could change the momentum. They can kind of get things back in order. That's what Russell Westbrook is supposed to be for Denver, people. Like, this is never supposed to be a thing. Jamal is going to be the starter. He's probably going to be the closer. But in the middle of that, you've got a guy in Russell Westbrook who can be a playmaker and a creator for himself and everybody around him. And that should be something that people celebrate in those times when Jokic is not on the floor. Not something where they are worried too much about it. Here's the thing. The Jokic Murray minutes, when those guys are sharing the floor, they're still unbelievably good. Like, despite the fact that they had a pretty bad one today, I'd wager that they are still about plus 12 on the net rating in that. And I just don't think that it's going to change. I think that Denver's going to try to work through things with Murray until it's untenable. And it's not untenable yet. Like if they were actually losing the Jokic minutes, that would be one thing. They're not. Like they've actually been really good with Murray and Jokic on the floor together. So I'm not too worried about this. Like I think that Denver, they got to get themselves back into gear. Maybe this is the wake up call that they need. But again, long term concerns. Are there some things that Denver has to worry about? Sure. Yeah. Could this be as simple as, hey, you get Aaron Gordon back, who's in a lot of times the emotional heartbeat of this team over the course of the last few years, and then suddenly you play well and you play harder? Absolutely. So that's something I'm at least waiting for. I want to wait and see if they get Aaron Gordon back, who's debatably the second best player on the team. I want to see what it looks like. And if it looks good, then great. If it doesn't look good and we still have some questions, then we can talk about those then. But the thing is, it's like we've talked about consistently, you can't trade Jamal during the season. So that's a non-starter. The only question is, what can you do kind of around that main group? And the answer is like not that much. So there's no use really worrying about it quite yet. I'm not worried about it. Okay, everybody, that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. Really appreciate everybody for stopping by. I know that this isn't like an awesome one to have to listen to, but here's the thing. I don't care. Like Denver didn't deliver their best. I probably didn't deliver my best today, but I do try. I do really try. Thank you for tuning into the show. Here's what's going to happen for me over this Thanksgiving time. I have an obligation on Thanksgiving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record this episode on Wednesday night, and then I'm going to premiere it on Thursday morning. So if you're really looking forward to it, then awesome. You can also catch some of my stuff over at Locked On Nuggets. But between those two, you'll get plenty of shows from me. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I will talk to you guys very soon.